Shalom, it's the 5th of April and I'm continuing with James chapter 4. Just want to share some thoughts and just organize my thoughts around James 4 verse 1. It talks about wars and conflicts, and then he gives the reason. It is desires in your members, or fleshly desires. And a fleshly desire is not only related to sin, it's also related to pride. Of course, pride is a sin. I'm just referring to the normal, desires, fleshly desires referred to as lust and gluttony and all that. But the deeper one that is not as evident is pride and the ego. So that is, I think, the main desire which caused the most of the problems. In the garden, the serpent basically confronted Adam and Chava and presented to them that they can be as God. So that is to do with the ego, that's to do with a power struggle. You want to be elevated to the one you serve. You want to be in the same position as him. And that was the serpent's desire that he transmitted to Adam and Chava. And then they took that bite of that fruit, of that suggestion, and they came tumbling down, falling to a lower state, making that desire of them basically impossible unless they repent and follow the restoration process which Yahweh put in place afterwards. So that's just putting desire into context. Now, desire in Hebrew is the word teshuka, and that has to do with abundance and desire, and also a river. And no, that's the root word, shuk. Now, teshuka is found in Genesis as well as the Song of Solomon in the context of, firstly, Chava, that will desire her husband. And then the Song of Solomon is the beloved, which is the male figure, the husband, desiring his wife. So the premise for desire is a covenantal concept. It's a desire that exists within the marriage covenant. It's a longing for your soulmate, your husband or your wife. And we know that Yahweh described and used the symbolism of him being the groom through Yeshua, and we are the bride. So we see the covenant language coming through as well. So desire is basically earmarked first and foremost for that high level desire, which is a divine desire. That is a desire for the divine and a desire for a covenantal relationship and anything that goes hand in hand with that. Now, all the pleasures associated with that will be sacred or set apart and will not be classified as sin. But anything outside the covenant where those desires are utilized or explored are classified as sin because it is done outside of the covenant, which is the marriage covenant, of course. Now, the root word for teshuka is shuv. No, not shuv. Shuk. And shuk means abundance. It also means overflow and river. Now, that is used in Psalm 65, where it says that Yahweh comes down and water the earth. And that is from that word shuk. And then he says that the river of Elohim flows. He used that term, the river of Elohim. So that is the source of the water that feeds and meet all their desires. So it's an interesting concept to make the connection to desire, first of all, from James' point of view, in what he sees, and the desires outside of the covenant and desires that is from the flesh, or the desires that's from the ego, always end up into strife. into battles, wars, and conflict. Now, the opposite is true as well. If you have Yahweh's desires and you follow His ways regarding to what He wants you to desire, it will always end up into unity, which is the basis of the covenant. The covenant is to restore, to bring something that has been separated back together again. Adam and Chava, they are two separated parts from Adam, and through language, the Lashon Hara, it caused a wedge and a separation, the fall of man and the separation, scattering of the nations. Now the covenant He made with Abraham has got the goal of restoring those broken pieces back together again. And that is what the premise of the covenant is. The main purpose of the covenant is to restore back into unity, to make it echad. Now, the means to do that is through this river of Elohim. Now, the river of Elohim is basically the root of that desire that is the covenantal means to restore back into echad, or into unity. So the river is the source or the means to make that happen. So what is the river of Elohim? If you read in Genesis, it talks, I think it's Genesis 2, it talks about a river that flows from Eden and waters the garden. Now, we always have in our minds, sometimes, I had that thought that Eden is the garden. But the garden is actually not Eden. The garden is planted east of Eden. Now, what we saw last time, the word east means in front of. And we have had this ruinous heap, which is Ai, and Bethel, the house of Elohim. And every morning you face the ruinous heap, you have to turn around to face Yahweh's house. And that is the fallen state that we're currently in. But in this language, the river that flows from Eden feeds the garden that is east of Eden, or in front of Eden. So when you are in this garden, Eden is in front of you every day. So the restored vision that Yahweh has, the vision for the restoration, is for us to wake up every morning and face Eden, not face a ruinous heap. So that is the end goal of the restoration. That's the end goal of repentance. That's the end goal of engaging with this river of Elohim. So river and water, of course, has to do with Yahweh's word, His will. And Yahweh also said in, I don't know the Psalm, forgot the Psalm, that He will give you the desires of your heart. Delight in Him and He will give you the desires of your heart. Now we think firstly that, He will give me everything that I want. No, He will place His desires and His will in your heart, and then you will delight in Him expressing those desires. And then you will express or live out His desires that came from this river of Elohim. So that is today's little few notes on James 4 verse 1 on desire. So I'll speak to you again tomorrow. Have a lovely day. Shalom.